You are now listening to On Air with Lewis Hunter.
Hi there, welcome back to On Air with Lewis Hunter, where we go into the lives of celebs, professionals, and behind the scenes workers of your favourite movies and film. Join me as we go into their lives to find out what it's like to be one of them. Today we are joined with Ross Mcclean. How you doing?
Very well. Thank you, Lewis. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, not too bad. So for people that don't know what you do or who you are, could you give them a brief description of exactly what that is?
Certainly. So I am a filmmaker, freelance filmmaker based in Belfast here. My work is in the world of creative documentary. That's my sort of interest, and I spend most of my time creating short films and working on a feature-length project here, but also, a number of commercial work. And then I do a bit of teaching at Queen's University in film production, but it all sort of centers around documentary and specifically creative documentary. But yeah, that's what I do. A little bit about me.
So have you always sort of wanted to be in that industry, or, like a filmmaker, director? Talk me through that.
Yeah, I have. I think it really came about at a young age. My father was very obsessed with a VHS camera and shooting everything and anything going on, and just sort of watching him with this, black object up to his eye the whole time, and then seeing him edit these videos together with all these retro titles and edit them actually within the camera. You just have to fast forward and do this big long process. Just seeing him do that for hours, and was fascinated with that. And then being given a camera, a wee Panasonic Handycam, I'll never forget it. Absolutely loved it. And just mucking about with mates. And firstly, just doing the sort of the jackass type videos, mucking around. And then somehow just started to do more controlled stuff where we were actually making films that, we thought were great, but they were actually garbage. But still, it sort of gave it created an interest in that for me through my teenage years. And then I was going to do international business for some crazy reason, and then took a year out. And during that year, I just thought, hold on, maybe I should do something in the film world, because I loved making films, I love watching films, I love chatting about it. And then switched from that fairly last minute to do film production at Queen's. So that was a sort of initial interest.
So yeah, you say that you went to Queen's. Did you do tech before that, or did you just go straight to uni?
Straight to uni, took a year out. So I took a year out and then went into undergrad, first year Queen's, in film production and anthropology. Actually, it was a sort of joint course.
Okay. So what inspired you to make your first documentary? Was there anything in your head that you thought, I really want to do this, and sort of went into sort of a tunnel vision mode to make it, or how exactly did that work?
Yeah, it's sort of pinpointing when the first documentary was. I think I only really fell in love with documentary when I was going to Queen's. I thought, oh, I want to be this, I want to make Hollywood, I want to be this, big budget films and all this. And I went in with that attitude. And in first year, I was showing a film called Gimme Shelter about the Rolling Stones by my lecturer. And I remember just sitting in the QFT and looking up and watching this film and how it was reality and how it was documentary, but in such a creative way. And the storytelling was just so unique. And I thought, there's something about this that just really, hit a chord with me, or struck a chord with me. And I just decided to write about it, research. And I think from then on, I just knew I wanted to be, in documentary and in creative documentary in particular. So your question, what was my first film? I made a documentary at Queen's in third year, and in Canada, I spent my second year in Canada at university as sort of an exchange year. And I took a documentary module there that was just incredible, and actually, made a number of documentaries. But I think the first film that I made after education that I would consider, close to a finished piece that I really felt was something that represented what I wanted to do was, my short film Hyde Bank, which was filmed here in Belfast and was funded by Northern Ireland Screen and the Scottish Documentary Institute. So yeah, that was the first sort of documentary I think that I wanted to focus in on.
Okay, and you just mentioned there Hidebank. What was sort of your idea behind making this short film documentary?
I was doing a master's program in Europe, again in documentary, and I happened to be home at Christmas because it was over 2 years. And when I arrived home, I got invited to play a football match in a prison on Boxing Day. And you know, an invitation like that you can't really say no to. And I jumped at it, and you know, 15 minutes from my house, I turned up in this place that I had no idea about. You know, I'd heard the word Hidebank and I had no idea about, and it just was very powerful to see this world, this enclosed world that was so close to where I'd lived this whole time, and I knew nothing about it. And walk in there and meet guys and understand where they're coming from and get to know them, and also get to know them and their lives in this context, which is, you know, a prison, and what that was like. And you know, we played the football match and got absolutely humped. I think it was about 22-2 in the end. They were incredible. And I always remember around the football pitch is like where all their cells are, and they were all just at the windows just slagging us the whole time. It was just unforgettable. And I got inside there, and just, you know, as with any sort of documentary filmmaker who gets any level of access to somewhere like that, you're going to want to return in some capacity. And I was able to through another project with the Lyric Theatre, and, you know, happened to meet an individual in there called Ryan who worked with a flock of sheep inside the prison. And, you know, I imagine anybody that could see that, you know, this 6'4" tattoo covered fella, you know, working with these innocent animals. And, you know, that image alone was just incredible. And it was something that I just felt there's a really powerful story in this. And then it developed, as with any documentary where you start somewhere, you start with this sort of creative spark or this moment, and it just takes you on a path and a journey that you can never imagine. And it's because you're dealing with reality, and you're dealing with things and people that, you know, have their own agenda. It's not controlled. It's not working from a script that I've created with actors who are going to turn up on time. This is a real guy, and this is a real situation, and events unfold in ways that you cannot plan. And I love that unpredictability about documentary. I think I always have, and that was certainly the case with this film, because I'm still working on it. You know, I made a short film, and then I'm now making a feature about sort of a similar story.
Okay, and have you any other jobs apart from directing that you've ever done, or do you have one at the minute, or, you know, talk me through that?
Yeah, so obviously, you know, I get this question a lot at Queen's, you know, how do you make your money and how do you survive? Especially in an industry that's so difficult, you know, to really gain a foothold. And certainly initially I was taking on, you know, working in cafes, but also, you know, working as a sort of production assistant for a production company in Belfast part-time, and balancing that up and getting that experience, and then, you know, managing to apply for these other jobs while also working in the cafe. And then slowly I got more commercial work, you know, and then studies and things like that. So it is certainly at the beginning, you're really just doing a balancing act, making sure you have enough money to survive and support this craft that in the beginning doesn't pay very well. And you know, and that's been the case. Thankfully, or what's great, recently I've just been able to devote all my time to filmmaking and a bit of teaching as well. And that's, you know, I'm incredibly grateful for that I can sort of wake up and just get stuck into projects, and you know, not make a load of money at all, but certainly, you know, I'm able to make enough to survive, and that's great. But there's sort of three areas that sort of that I talk about as, you know, how I've made it work, or what I work on regularly. So it's, you know, short films which have a fairly small budget, but they're about stories that I'm passionate about. There's a feature film that I'm working on at the moment that's a larger budget, and then there's more commercial work. And the commercial work is what generally keeps me alive and keeps me, you know, sort of afloat financially. And it allows me to work in these other two areas passionate and give me the time to do that. But also, I enjoy the commercial work, and I think it sort of informs and gives me experience in certain areas that these are benefited by, if that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. It's sort of an industry where it's a hard one to sort of understand, to do with the whole making money side of it and how to manage that. I've spoke to a lot of people who are in that industry, and for example, there's a boy in my tech who is a scribe. He was episode 1, I believe, of the podcast. He is
Right.
a promoter for music festivals, and he could do that on the side all he wants, but he has to do teaching, he has to do scribe. It's hard to sort of manage and balance that.
Definitely.
So, 100% get that.
It's a balancing act, that it always is, and you just got to make sure you're giving yourself enough time to do the things that you love doing the most, which in my case is filmmaking. But living somewhere like Belfast is great. Like, I don't know if I could live this lifestyle in London. I think I would have to graft more in the commercial world, in a way that I probably wouldn't enjoy. And I think certainly the relatively low cost of living in Belfast suits my lifestyle and the sort of freelance work that I get.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned there, with your first documentary, Bank, your first one outside of Queens, you got funding from, different sort of companies. How did you manage to get there? Because obviously that's not an easy task where, you can just go straight up and be like, fund me. So like, how exactly did that come around?
Yeah. It came about, what's great, and what I try and encourage sort of students at Queens to tap into is there's a lot of great programs out there, and development programs for young filmmakers and first-time filmmakers that are there to give people like us a chance with a bit of money and creating a film, and not just doing it out of your own pocket, or doing a very sort of run and gun cheap film that we do until this point. And I found a development program called Bridging the Gap. And it was a Scottish Documentary Institute were running it, but they picked one participant or one project from Northern Ireland, and the rest were Scottish. So I applied for that with this story with the sheep and in Hydebank, and managed to get that. And was just an incredible moment where you think someone, what relatively small budget, but someone's willing to give me money to see this idea through in a way that they're taking me seriously, and they're taking this idea seriously. And after having so many years of study and work and doing things on the side and working at different productions, it's just a very important moment, and was very grateful and still incredibly grateful to be offered that. But yeah, just keeping an eye out. This is what I encourage anyone, like the Northern Ireland Screen website, BFI, follow. Everybody's on social media, follow these platforms or follow these organizations, and they're always posting about this. You've got to go out there and just find these things out yourself, create a sort of online community where you're going to receive this information, because that's how I discovered both, the master's program I was on and this development program. And yeah, so that's how it came about for Hydebank.
Okay, and obviously Hydebank has been nominated and given awards for that documentary. How exactly did that happen?
So the great thing about the development program was they've worked on every part of the process. So pre-production, production, post-production, and then distribution. The Scottish Documentary Institute were involved in that, and it was just a great opportunity to gain an insight to how they distribute the films at the end. Like, you make these films and you want people to see them, that should be the goal. If I know so many people that just make films and then throw it up on YouTube, or I think it's important that people see your work, and you should be motivated by that. And certainly the Scottish Documentary Institute had a fantastic distribution strategy that we would sit down and talk about, where do we want this film to go, what festivals would we like it to go in, what's the sort of journey for. And I had, through the master's program I had done in Europe, been lucky enough to attend a number of festivals, like documentary festivals. So I knew what ones I wanted to be a part of, and had mentioned that to Scottish Documentary Institute, and they would just apply with the film to these festivals, and you sort of do a festival circuit. There's a calendar of festivals around the world, I guess, specifically for documentary, and you just want to sort of hit the important ones, or the ones where you're in competition. And Hidebank had a really nice festival run, for 2 years, which is usually the lifespan for documentaries on this circuit. And it was just great because for the first year it was before COVID, so I could actually attend a lot of the festivals, and then the second year COVID hit, so I missed out on traveling to a few of the festivals, which was a bit gutting, but alas.
Okay, yeah, sounds really, really good. And it's good to sort of get them out there and get a wider sort of range of people seeing it than just, here in Belfast. You get to all these different countries, and a lot of people wouldn't have been able to see that otherwise, as you said.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good how they work. But obviously Hidebank, it's being made into a feature, as you said. But is there any other projects you're working on at the minute?
Yes, I am. I'm working on a couple of short films, supported by Northern Ireland Screen and the Community Relations Council. The great thing about both those films are that they're local stories, and I've really enjoyed coming back after spending a period of time abroad, to tell stories from Northern Ireland in a way that is from me. It's quite important for me that I'm able to do that. The first one, which is going into post-production, is about a man who lives around the corner from me here, who was obsessed with radio communications. And I remember from a young age walking past this house and just seeing aerials on every inch of the roof. He had these aerials and satellite dishes, and I thought, right, I gotta meet this guy. And 10 years later, 15 years later, coming home and just knocking on his door and just saying, what's going on here? And Alistair, brought me into the house and just showed me, like, instantly just brought me in, cup of tea, walked around, just showed me everything. And I just walked into this space that was just the most exciting space I'd been into. It's like a film set that you could never construct or imagine. It has to be something that's been built up over 50 years, which Alistair, had lived in that house for that length of time. And I just thought, right, we've got to make something here. And, it's about radio communication, but Alistair also, he's had part of his throat removed, so he struggles to verbally communicate. So it's about sort of that relationship between radio communication, which uses voice, and communication from a guy that actually struggles to physically do that. And we shot that on 16mm because of, what motivated that was just the house itself. And it was like a time capsule, and all these sort of wires and machines going on, and 16mm just really lent itself to that. And it was just a beautiful process for me to shoot. We had 60 minutes of film. It's not digital where you're shooting, hours and hours and hours, and you can do retakes and everything. No, you've got 60 minutes to make this 20-minute film. So you've got to get it right, and you've got to storyboard it. And Alistair may only have one take to do that shot. But it was just a really good process and learning process for me, because it required so much discipline. And it wasn't my Sony, digital 4K camera where I can just keep that thing going and going and going. Every time you're going and going, you're using up money. And it's going to stop at some point. So yes, I'm realizing how lengthy these answers are, but working on two shorts. So that's one short. Another, I'm about to go into filming on Sunday in East Belfast about a boxing club there, and about sort of first and second generation migrants that have come here and are boxing in the heart of East Belfast, which I'm still getting my head around that we're doing that on Sunday for a week. So I'm sort of in the middle of preparing for that, which has been pretty turbo. Doing a number of commercial jobs, which are great because they're also documentary, which is nice that I've maybe found some sort of niche where a lot of actually the commercial work I'm now getting works with real people, real stories, and I'm able to make them in a similar way than I would my other work. and then yeah, the feature length film. So yeah, working on a good bit at the moment anyway. So I need to maybe take it easy in a month or two.
And what do you think your next step is then to, go up that next level?
The next level, my next step. It's a good question. Sorry, I'm just realizing the light in my face here is that all right there?
Yeah, that's perfect.
And to go up to the next level, it's a great question. You I think you can't make short films your whole life as much as I would love to, because I just love the short form, but you're not really gonna make a career out of that, or certainly be considered in certain spheres a filmmaker if you're just making short films. So getting the feature length completed, which could be another year, it could be another 2 years, I'm not too sure. It's with documentary, it's just a very lengthy process, and it's kind of a mad process, because it'll probably be 5 years all in that I'm working on this one project, which it's just insanity. But
Yeah.
you've got to love it or you'd go mad. So certainly getting a feature under my belt's important, and then more commercial work probably, I think. But I'm at a level I'm pretty happy with, and I have enough free time to travel and enjoy life outside of filmmaking, which I think is important to maintain, because you just hear people in the industry that just are working non-stop, especially in the sort of fiction. And I had a bit of taste of working on film sets, large scale film sets, and these sort of Netflix productions in Belfast, initially as an extra, which was a laugh, and then had a few more roles. And I just didn't like the atmosphere. I just don't, well, not that I didn't like the atmosphere, I didn't think I was suited for it, for that world. And I know I could have easily gone down that path, and I'd be a lot more maybe financially comfortable, but I just know how many hours those people put in, and it's quite a hierarchical structure. So you have defined roles and you stay within that role. And I think for me, documentary, most of the time I'm making these films with my mates, and it's large, and it's small scale, and it's sometimes just me and a sound recordist, or me and a camera person, and I love that, and yes, I'm not making serious coin, and it's unlikely it's going to go on Netflix, and it's not going to be considered in these locations or these contexts that are so well respected, but if you enjoy doing it and you feel that it's important, then I would consider that as worthy. But I would obviously like to get to a point where I'm just maybe making features, and I'm just maybe making work, and I don't have to maybe depend on more commercial stuff. But yeah, getting to that level at some point, I hope.
It's all about the passion, sticking to it, and just, sticking on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, I think that covers everything for the questions today.
Great.
Super. So I say thank you once again for, coming on and taking the time.
No problem. I enjoyed that. I hope it was all right. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was perfect. So if people want to find out, where to find out more info on you, where exactly would they do that?
You can go on my website, I guess, rossmcclean.com. And then I'm not so good on social media, but I occasionally post a wee video or two, or mention a bit of what I'm doing on Instagram. But I really should get into that world a bit more, because people it just seems to be so important, reaching out to people, and the old TikTok world, which makes me feel incredibly old that I'm not on it and I don't know much about it. But yeah, so website, and then certainly maybe Instagram is probably the best call, which is at Ross the Head. Don't ask why.
Well, yeah, so thank you so much for coming on. I think that'll be everything for today. And I will say thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.